Hey everybody, welcome back to Old World Legends, where we focus on growing the community. I'm your host Mike, and with me as always is Evan.
Yes, Dragon Shagat Evan here, and you know what? It's actually my job today to introduce our guest, Pash, King Pash of Pashhammer. Yeah, a lot of you
Woo!
guys maybe know about him.
Hi.
He's kind of been the central feature of the Scotland kind of old world scene, at least on YouTube. And I know you recently won a game or won a tournament with your Bretonian Exiles. So, we're just having this call to
Yes.
discuss what is going on in Warhammer the Old World right now. Where do we kind of want the game to go in the future? And I think the topic that I'm trying to push people towards is, how should you play this game? Should it be competitive? Should it be narrative? What does that even look like?
Now, before we get too far into it, most of our community knows who Evan and myself are, but
Yeah.
Pash, it'd be great to give everybody a heads up, introduce yourself to the community, tell them a little bit about yourself before we dive into the topic.
Of course, yeah, no problem. Hi, everyone. So I'm Pash. I run a small YouTube channel called Pashhammer. It's mostly focuses on competitive Warhammer and have basically dived fully, sort of head into Old World as soon as it was released. Before that, my gaming experience goes all the way back to about 7th edition Warhammer. So I played through most of 7th edition, all of 8th. Did lots of very competitive stuff like international events and all the UK scene type stuff. And then Warhammer died, and I went on to play a few other games. And when it returned, I was very, very happy to dive back into it. So, in a nutshell, I've pretty much been playing Warhammer for give or take 20 odd years, and most of it at a competitive level. But that's not to say that I'm purely a competitive player. I do enjoy narrative games also, and some of my most fond memories are of big, fun club narrative games of Warhammer, and I still remember them to this day. So definitely a few war stories to share there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you have a very similar journey to, I think, a lot of players, right? Some players might come into this from a modeling aspect. Some players might come into it from, painting or hobby or from a narrative. But a lot of people, I think, actually initially get into it as they're like, I'm excited about this game. I'm excited about this hobby. Where's a community? How can I start getting involved in the community? And it's usually at those RTTs, right? Those one-day
Yeah.
events that most people really get their toe in the water. And I think it's a huge driving factor, motivating factor for people to go. They need goals, right? There's nothing that
Yeah.
motivates, I find, a community more. And I have an event. It's on the calendar. It's on this date. I
Yeah.
have to get this model together, this army assembled. I have to get this painted. And then once you show up, what's the first thing I know I do and most players do when
Break
you
their
leave an
model.
event? Well, no, besides breaking their mouth, they're like, okay, let's go back to the building board. How can I tweak my list? What am I doing
Right.
next? Right. You immediately start list building and start brainstorming and all that. And I think that's how many players, not everybody, but a large portion of the community starts. And then to your point, Pash, hey, you start having fun, you start making friends, you build these relationships, you get part of the scene. And then after, 3, 4, 5, 6, 20, 30 other decades into the hobby, you start saying, like, I love the competitive scene. It's really fun. But this is actually, in particular, Old World. I truly believe Old World is one of, if not the best, Games Workshop game or canvas for narrative, story, immersion. And competitive is great, but there's more to it than just that. And I think this is where the deeper you get into it, the more excited you get into the hobby. You start not playing competitive less, but expanding
Right.
what you're
Yeah.
interested in to beyond competitive play.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've been in the hobby long enough to remember the days when you had to bring every army you brought had a story behind it. It wasn't just here's the net list that I found
You
online
got points
because
for naming your
it,
units and having a written
exactly.
narrative. Yeah.
I mean, it was in some events that I went to. The events that I remember, my very first competitive Warhammer event was called a local club event called Forgotten Heroes, and it was just under the 2,000 point cap, and there was basically no
Mhm.
lords. It was all about heroes, no special characters, none of that, and you had to
Mhm.
write a story for everything. You had to name everybody, and I remember spending more time naming my units than I did making my army list.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That was definitely a big part of it, and it's actually a tradition that I've sort of carried forward, or I've tried to carry forward in my tournament lists now. Whenever I submit a list, I always put some names on it. Some of them are, ones that I've used before. Some of them are just funny names or things that come into my head. I think it makes people laugh, and it's something that's harks back to a time where we
Yeah.
did things differently. Yeah,
But it's that immersion, and I think this format, this game, really enables that with the customization of the units, the customization of
yeah,
the characters, the deep list building just empowers you to really
yeah,
start to craft more of that story. And different people tackle it different ways. I remember one of the fun things I did back in the day when I was much more competitive. I really just run events now, but back in the day, you know, fifth edition, sixth edition, seventh edition, so forth and so on. Vampires were certainly my favorite army back in the day, still one of my favorite armies. I would name all my lords and everything, but I actually took it a little bit further. I had a display board, right? Because I was competing at events. And so you'd have your display board. And I had my undead scene and I had a big dead tree in it. And then what I started doing, I was inspired by the Black Knight. And so actually every time I defeated an opponent, I would take a picture of their army and a shield, and I would go and paint up a shield like my opponent's color scheme and then hang it with chains from the tree. So after a couple of years, my tree was full of all the vanquished armies that my vampire lord, and it was just every time someone saw that display board, they're like, what is that? Right? Tell me the story of why are all these shields? Why is there a lizardman shield? Why? And it was just such a fun, like, God, it was just, I had fun just talking about it, right? It was almost more fun than the memory of the games themselves. And it's that crafting that narrative, creating your adventure, creating that. That's why we play with models and terrain, not tokens, right? And why the hobby is so immersive. I know, Evan, right? You not as grizzled as us, but you have been playing for quite some time.
Hey,
you definitely, I think, have more armies than us.
I was 10 years old. I walked into a Games Workshop and I said, give me your entire stock, or at least all of my allowance can get me. And that was 20 years ago.
So you got one box.
Yeah. Well,
that's how it starts.
So the question, actually, Evan, if you do remember, what was your very first purchase, like your hobby purchase?
I remember mine. Let's see.
I remember mine as well, so I'm curious to know what yours.
So I don't think it counts if somebody buys something for you. So my first thing that was bought for me. Specifically?
Yeah, did you beg for it? Did you hold on to their treasure as they tried to leave the store?
It may have been one of those, my wealthy aunt heard that I was into something and went and bought the.
That's okay.
But that was the Battle for. It was Battle for Macragge, Warhammer 4th edition starter set.
That was a great starter.
Monopose Space Marines with
very good.
I'm gonna call them Terminus.
With the Crash Lander.
Yeah, I have that Lander. I've got that thing. I just painted it like 2 years ago.
It's really good.
That's
okay, so you remember, that's good.
But that's actually not the first thing I bought. I bought the 6th edition starter set for Fantasy because I was into 40K for like 3 months, and then I was like, never mind, Fantasy is my shit. I'm a huge Fantasy dude, and I was playing Empire. I forced my brother to play Orcs and Goblins against me. He had those monopose orcs.
You inspired your brother, inspired him.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, so you remember yours. So Pash, let's see. What was your first purchase?
So the very first set of models that I it was bought for me because I was still a teenager at the time, was a unit of 5 Space Marine Scouts, the metal ones, with the the poses like that and all that. I still have them. They were also the first models I painted. They cost, I think at the time they were £9 UK pounds. So they're probably like £45 now. They're £9 each at least. But I still have them somewhere in the case as a reminder of like where it started, where it all began, with blood effects on them and everything.
You got to sell it. Yeah, they're
with the wobbly eyes and all of that. Like I went everything for it. It was really, really good.
Yeah, I learned early on at my first few models that, primer's a thing. That does help with the paint to stick. I started, my first back of the day was 3rd edition Fantasy. This is a while ago. And it was a skeleton chariot and a box of skeletons. This was a metal chariot for back of the day. This is before the plastic one. And the undead book, because remember, it wasn't Vampire Counts and Tomb Kings, it was undead. So that was dates it back because I spent a lot of my childhood in California, but then we moved to England for 3 years, and my mom came back. I was like, I was a kid, I was a teen, I was like 12, 14 or something at the time. I'm like, we just left the other side of the world, what it felt like for a teenager, right? And she's like, I saw this really cool place in the mall. And like, what? She's like, called Games Workshop. I'm like, what is that? And so she dragged me to the mall, and I'm like, that was the biggest mistake she ever made. I've been hooked. 30 years later, now I spend my spare time talking about it with other friends.
Yeah, and they saw you coming. They saw you coming. They were like, this is our
Yeah,
target market. We're
target
gonna have this
market.
guy's soul for the next 60
Oh,
years.
the store was packed, but you know what? Despite being a
Yeah,
packed store, I still remember the staff members who were so kind and so nice. And
yeah.
Yeah.
I went to the store and they walked me through it and they helped me, and it was a great memory. It was a great day. So yeah,
You
And
know
I
what's
bet you
funny?
when go for it, Evan.
I was just going to say that I've gone into a Games Workshop or Warhammer store because they renamed them. They're called Warhammer now.
That's right.
And
yeah,
I've gone into them a bunch of times. I live near one of the biggest one in the U.S. It's called the Warhammer
Mm,
Games Cafe in L.A., and that's the one I go to
yeah,
a
it's a
lot of
big
time.
one.
And
right.
most of the people I meet and talk to in there have been collecting Warhammer for 2 years or less. Like
Oh
Hmm.
wow.
most
Okay.
of the people
Well,
who work there, I'm saying the people who are
mm,
employed there, they've been into this, they heard about it, or they started the hobby 2 years or so ago, and I'm like, and they're like, so I know more than you. Like, I'm wondering if you
yeah,
guys
of
had a
course.
similar
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
experience.
That's just
Yeah,
called
it's
getting
funny.
older, Evan.
Yeah,
Well, it's like because we are sort of, I want to say, senior hobbyists.
yeah,
We've been in it long enough to know the things you actually need and to know the places where you can get it at the right price or the right, the right things that you want. I think, the Warhammer shops, they're more of a sort of an introduction to the
They
hobby,
are.
aren't they?
They're onboarding.
They're way
yeah,
they get you in, and then after that you then discover what your hobby kink is, and then you go beyond that, and then sort of expand. So in a way, it's really more of a starter shop now, but
They
it does a
are.
great, wonderful job of it, and
Hmm.
it really helps to promote the hobby. Like, where else can you do that other than a hobby shop?
Yeah.
Um, it's
Yeah,
definitely
there
well
really is, and
worthwhile.
that's why they still have it, right? But there were, and they've gone through different phases of it over the decades, or different CEOs in charge of the
Mm,
companies and their approach and such. And I think their current model of keep them lean, keep them small, one person staff
mm,
stores opened at the most maximum times of the week. And again, it
yeah,
is they truly are less about selling the products of the store, more about an introduction, a welcoming environment of hey,
yeah.
here's this cool hobby, because you get
yeah,
hooked, you make lifelong friends. You're
exactly.
doing it, like 30 years later,
It's like
right? In
selling
terms of still
cigarettes.
making new friends.
If they get one purchase, they're very likely to be buying this for the rest of their life until they die. So you just got
Yep.
to get
That
them
is
hooked, right?
that is true. But the one special thing I will say about tabletop games compared to video games or D&D or many other
Mm,
hobbies that they're all expensive, no matter what
Right.
hobby you get
yeah.
into. But I will say one thing that is truly special, in my opinion, and magical about Warhammer and tabletop games and the Games Workshop games is it's one of the few places that men after they're and women, but after you hit that 30-40 year old mark, you make new
Mm,
friends.
Yeah.
I have more friends today than I ever had growing up, and it's because of the love of Warhammer and playing
yeah.
tabletop games together that has brought us together. That is truly special, and you do not get that from everything else, because you get older, you get married, you have your career, you have your jobs, you have your kids.
Mhm.
When you make new friends, I make so many friends all the time from people who love playing Warhammer.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the amount of people, the new people that I've met since starting Old World, it's funny because when Warhammer was back, I got in touch with like people that I played years ago, and I was like,
Hmm.
"Hey, Warhammer's back! Like, are you gonna do it?" And they were like, I'm doing other things. I'm sort of busy." And a few, a lot fewer people said yes than I thought would do.
10
So
years
I've
is a
made lots.
long gap, to be
It's a
fair.
long time.
In
It's
their
a very long
defense, that's a decade,
time.
right? We only live for so many decades, so that's a long
Yeah,
time.
that's true. It's a long time, but so I've met a whole bunch of new people, a whole bunch of really nice, lovely people, and it's
Mhm.
and I keep seeing them, and we have the banter online and the discourse, and when we go to events, we see each other, and we sort of give each other crap when some of us are taking different lists or whatever. So like it's fantastic. It's really really good. So yeah, you're totally right. You can still make friends when you're over 30. Turns out
Mhm. It's
Yeah.
it's
pretty cool. Pretty
it's
special.
just it's something special. Yeah, it's definitely something unique. And one of the things I think that brings us all together is sort of the sort of the visual aspect of it. So more so than like a computer game or like a card game or anything like that. I feel like Warhammer is quite tangible. So when you
Mhm.
turn
Yeah.
up to an event or a tournament, you can like the first thing I do is I unpack my army and then I go walk around and just to see people's miniatures. I go and see what people have brought, what people have painted, and if I see something nice, I'll always make a comment on it, just to tell them because I think I think it's good to be positive about the hobby and just, tell people like that's a really cool conversion, or oh, I've spotted you've made this. Is that something unique? Is this a combination of these miniatures, or did you 3D print that, or where did you get that? Like and people love talking about their armies, and
That's
I
right.
think it's fantastic. It's one of the big appeals of this hobby, and I think we should
Yeah.
definitely keep it up. Yeah,
Absolutely. And
definitely.
I think we're starting to see that certainly in our local community, certainly at SoCal here, where we started
Mm.
with a whole bunch of typically the veterans, right? This is where hey, it's back. We're all here. We're in. Let's play. And that's what we had at the beginning. And then we started to get what I call the converts from a lot of them from 40K in particular, some AOS, some, War Machine, but a lot for us, a lot from 40K started coming over. But now that was like the first year, right? Now
Mm.
we're in year two, getting the later half of that. We're seeing more and more people to events, people who haven't played tabletop games before or who
Yeah.
haven't showed up to events. And this is, and they are totally new to the hobby. And I think there's enough positive energy, enough momentum, enough excitement behind Old World. Like, no, this is not a flash in the pan. It might have started as a beta test, but this is taking off and people are here for it. And I just love the positive community vibe that exists and is being promoted by other content creators, right? We do that. I know you focus on that. Other content creators focus on the positive energy, creating that welcoming, inviting atmosphere that, let's be frank, wasn't as strong a decade ago in terms of the competitive scene. It's much stronger today. And we're seeing that next wave of gamers starting to
Yeah.
come into Old World. And that's exciting.
That is exciting. I think it's a really cool thing to see people who come into the hobby having maybe played Total War and been like, oh
Mhm.
man, that was phenomenal. Oh wow, they've got a tabletop version. Let me find out more about it. Like I know
Yeah.
people who have come into the hobby just from that angle. There's people that have come in from it from other gaming systems. There's people who have returned to it from many years absence, having had their stint of having kids and
Yeah.
whatever else, and
Mhm.
a busy lifestyle. And so there are people coming into it from all sorts of angles. It is growing, and I think a year and a half in now, it feels like it's here to stay. It's not like a Dread Fleet or like a one-off Space Hulk type release.
Yeah.
It's very much going to be updated. It's going to be supported. It's now probably, some say, one of their better selling systems, maybe behind 40K, maybe even. Who knows? Like it's very much in their forefront. So much so that GW mentioned in their financial reports. I mean, it's got to be good, right?
Right.
Yep,
Just
and
based
that
on
and
numbers
they,
alone.
because at the end of the day, as much as we love it, it is
Mm,
still GW as a business. They need
yeah,
to, and it's about, is this popular enough? Is it generating revenue? Are people excited for Old World and are going to spend their money on it? And the answer is
yeah,
yes,
very much
absolutely
so.
yes. And so, while it might have started very small with this beta test, I am personally very confident it's going to keep growing.
Yeah,
It might be currently on the website ranked as number 4 behind Horse Heresy. Whether that's actually true on the financial sales or not, very debatable. I think it's
yeah,
doing better than perhaps the website might show us. But I do believe this will continue to elevate and continue to accelerate with the great content we're seeing. Not just great new models and a whole new army, but great rules, great arcane journals, tons of support. Do you remember back in the day how many editions you would go before you get a new army book for something? And now they are on the ball. And I love that we haven't seen the dumbing down of the game
mm,
system, right? Or the
yeah,
ultra streamlining for mass appeal. It's that crunch
yeah,
of the system, the depth of the system that is
yeah,
why we love it so much, and what separates it from other game systems, which are still good game systems, but that's what makes
yeah.
Old World feel different, and it is staying, and the sales are hopefully continue to grow. And I don't 40K Space Marines are a real thing. Let's
Of
not
course.
kid ourselves. What does everyone say? 60% of like 40K sales are Space Marines. I believe it. I've bought many of them myself.
Yeah.
And so, but 40K is going to be very dominant for a long time. But I do believe Old World absolutely has the potential to be number 2, and probably I think it's not that far off.
Well, this is the interesting thing is the market for Old World is in that older range, isn't it? Like I would
At the
basically say
moment,
the
yeah.
average old world player is 35 to 55 years old. I think in my head
It
that's
skews
roughly the
older
demographic.
today.
Yeah,
Today,
yeah, yeah. Today, at the moment. But what I do think is interesting is they are now supporting it to the level where they're bringing out new armies we haven't seen before. There's not been a new Warhammer army in 20 plus years.
it was
Yeah.
I
23
mean,
years. Ogre Kingdoms,
yeah,
23 years
Ogre
ago.
Kingdoms, yeah,
That's a
exactly, and
long time from for a
they,
new army.
it's a very long time, and now say what you say about Cathay in terms of rules, but in terms of models, they're phenomenal. In terms of like visual
Absolutely.
appeal, they're really appealing. And there's been so many people that I have seen that have just started to come on the peripherals of like the our scene that have said, oh yeah, like I was sort of okay about Old World and I saw Cathay, I played them in Total War or they looked really cool. And yeah, they brought me into the hobby. So I actually think that release and then hopefully more releases in the future will actually bring new players into the hobby and they will be hungry for content. Like I actually played a game against somebody not too long ago online and they said, yeah, I'm really new to this. I've come from 40K, but you know, I'm really hungry for like old world content. There's not enough old world content. Like they watch it. It made it sound like they've watched everything, and they were like, "Yeah, I want more." And to be honest, I can feel that because I'm in the same level where I'm like anything new released for Old World, any of these channels, and I almost want to look out for new channels.
Hmm.
Um, it's you're always like, "Oh, yeah, I want to listen to that. I want to find out about that." Even if it's an army you don't collect or you don't really, want to play, you're like, "Oh, I want to know how this army
Hmm.
went against this other army, or if there's any cool sort of like tech or any cool tricks that people have found out." So yeah, I think people are coming into the hobby in droves, and I think they're hungry for more content. And GW are just happy to shovel it as much as they can
Yeah.
from their end. But as also content creators, I think it's our sort of our responsibility to drive it and to see where to make sure it moves in a positive direction, right?
Yeah, I
Absolutely. And yeah.
I was just going to say, it seems to me that the rules writers, at very least for Old World, are very in tune with what either the community or the content creators' opinions
Mm.
are. And I can see that clearly by their FAQs. Now, it might be 8 or 9 months out of, past whenever that thing was a big problem or whatever,
Yeah.
but eventually it seems like they go, okay, you guys really didn't like the poison Death Star, so we're just going to triple nerf those into the ground.
Yeah,
Like,
that's not a thing anymore. Don't worry about
don't worry about it.
that.
Yeah. And while it's not perfect, you're right, Evan, that clearly the 1.51 update, while was it perfect? Absolutely not.
Mm,
But it
Yeah.
was a massive win, in my opinion. And I think we all share that opinion.
yeah,
There were huge wins in there from the nerfing, taking down the alpha predators in the game system to
yeah,
lifting up infantry to redoing the magic system. It was really almost not a whole reboot of the game, but the changes were so significant. It really
yeah,
felt like a 1.5 patch to the entire game system, and it felt like they almost were testing. Okay, here are the things we're thinking for edition 2. Let's get them out
yeah,
there now. And I definitely feel that, yes, while we would all love them to respond faster,
yeah,
everyone always says for every game system they've ever played since the dawn of time, they are responding very reasonably well. And you can see, and it was also too, notice they didn't go like, it was like FAQ 1.1,
yeah.
1.2, silence, 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 silence. 1.51.
1.5.
It's like, well, what? Wait a second. Whoa, whoa, hold up. What happened to the 3 and the 4 and
Yeah,
all those in between? They were iterating on it internally,
It's either
right? And
that
then
or
they got
they wanted to have the kind of splash of saying it's 1.5, and that
no.
gives you
There
a
were
bit
so
of
many updates. No, there were so many
I,
gives
updates
you a
in
bit
there.
of
It
influence
clearly.
to say
I,
it's 1.5, don't you think?
I, I feel like they left quite a while between like the previous
Yeah,
FAQ,
there was a
There's a
whatever it
little
was,
gap.
while.
1.3 and 1.5, and it felt like there was a number of things that they were on the cusp of fixing. Oh, but maybe we'll just put this into the FAQ. Oh, maybe we'll just take care of this, and then suddenly you're like, well, if we wait another 2 months, we'll have like another half edition. So let's
But a
just,
lot of those needed to synergize. Like a lot of those, if you had released them individually, would not have had the
yeah,
right impact or would have caused other problems if they didn't
yeah,
really. It really needed to be a package and how they released it. So I think that's what they were realizing. Hey, if we just did like the infantry stuff by itself, but we didn't address dragons, or the point, they really needed to bundle a lot of those updates together. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I think so. And I agree. It has been a positive change. It's not been perfect. I think
Nope.
there's other things that they can improve on, certainly. But overall, 1.5 has been a positive change. Cathay, on the whole, in terms of bringing numbers of people into the game, in terms of model sales, has been a positive change.
Yep.
It certainly got people talking about different ways they want their Warhammer to play, different
Yeah,
ways they want to play the game, and different avenues that we can go down. One thing that I don't know if this is, and this is might be an interesting point of discussion actually, is just how the scene has changed before 1.5 and after 1.5. So what I've seen locally here in the UK is that before 1.5 there was quite a dominant no comp
interesting.
sort of field where people were like, no, the game is fine as it is. We don't need comp. We don't need anything else. We're very happy with the way it is. Then 1.5 comes out and match play, at which point GW basically said, well, here's some light restrictions. So we're happy with that. And then, they bring out Cathy, which have had strong results
Yeah.
that people are starting to discuss. Comp now being a normal thing. It's been normalized. It's now like, how much do we want? Do we want a light touch? Do we want heavy touch? Where do we want to fall in between? And there's room for everything in between. I don't know if this has been the same with you guys, or if you're still happy with the way that the game is written.
Evan, what's your perception of how you feel people down here
So
have been?
we have a bit of a different story that we went on than you guys. And what our story is that I really felt it was kind of 9 months ago or so kind of late last year, early this year, that really that this game needed to have missions. It needed to have some kind of a scenario you were playing over that wasn't just you kill your opponent, because all I do is kill you and your army is my win condition means my army is your win. So I can make my army unkillable and then you can't win. That's how the game, that's the math of how it works. So your army is either I kill everything or it's unkillable. And those are like the only two extremes that could exist. So without any kind of reason to be on this particular
unkillable / avoidance.
Right. Those are the two ways.
Both are in the. Both are. We were getting exactly to Evan's point. Our meta was shifting to people were figuring out how to play the game, and they realized, hey, I only need 100 points to win. I could either just not ever give you 100 points or just avoid you. And suddenly what was happening is you weren't really fighting battles anymore. You were playing this cat and mouse avoidance game. And it was actually players realized it's actually they're more likely to win if they don't engage with their opponent. And this was not resulting in fun games.
So okay, when I see stuff like this happen, I tend to get hyper fixated, and then I create a 27-page long document with flavor text and everything of here's the Gleaming Pennant mission scenarios that use standard bearers and ranks to control objectives on the table, and
it was really good.
And we played that for I think it was like 2 or 3 months. We had 2 or 3 tournaments where we were playing my missions.
Well, we started with Evan's 27-pager, and I said, "Great, make it 3 pages."
Yeah, so
and then we played that.
Well, I was trying to mimic the core rulebook has missions, and the missions in the core rulebook take up like 2 pages where they have
the foundation of what Evan had crafted is very much the foundation of what it became and what we were playing.
Right. So we played that for a little while, and the downsides of my system was that all you needed to do was have a horde unit of infantry with 3 ranks and a banner, and you could stand 6 inches away from the objective, and until somebody came over there to kill you, you controlled it, and the other person couldn't, because it was whatever your ranks and banners were the kind of your OC, your or CR, whatever you call it in 40K.
Yeah.
And so that made 20 clan rats with a banner were pretty OP, or 20 zombies. And so the meta was very much, how can I take 3 or 4 units of that plus some things that shoot you? And that was fun, in particular because it gave you the opportunity of having a lot of like just toughness 3, meat shields to go and chop through, right? But it was also a little bit abusable if the objective was near impassable terrain. And then the match play guide came out and was very similar to what I wanted to do, but instead of it being, ranks, banners, infantry, it was all about who's the closest to the objective. And I don't know if you're experiencing this in your environment, but our meta is slightly dominated by Eric, who is a high elf player, and he is one of the best players in the world, definitely. After playing him, he's ranked on Old World ranks if you want to look at that. He plays high elf.
One of the top 2 Erics in the West Coast.
Yeah, we have 2 Erics. They were both at Palm Springs.
Both of them came to Palm Springs, and they both dominated. They're super friendly, but boy, are they really good at Old World.
Yeah.
Those guys. And they also plan together. They're in cahoots, the Erics, against everyone else.
So I want to ask you about this. Everyone's saying, oh, great, infantry is so great, it's so good. You can go hold your objective. You can guard your baggage train with it. Okay, but what about 5 skirmishing fast cavalry who just flee whenever you charge them and then rally and run back onto the objective because now you're not next to it anymore? You ran after me, so I just go behind you. And then now I'm touching it. Now, because my 5 random dudes who are toughness 3 with a 6-up save are touching the objective, your 35-man Black Orc brick who's like 4 inches away, you don't get to count as being there, right?
But
Yeah,
but it is worth pointing out though, while we do have
Yeah.
some very strong, very talented players, they're not. They will win the events. That doesn't represent the bulk
It
of the
does
player
not.
base, right? When
Yeah.
we have 30 people showing up to the events, I think we have 32 coming to our doubles coming up soon, and the majority of players are much more casual.
yeah,
Very much so. Some of them it's their first event. Some of them they've been to a couple of our events. Some of them are really showing up because they're competing in painting. Some of them are just showing up to hang out with their friends. I love those people. Right? They're just there to have a great weekend and have a great time, which is why we like to call what we do events and
Yeah.
not so
Not
much
tournaments.
tournaments, right?
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
we are here for everybody to have a great time. And so, yes, we do have some people who truly are masters of this game and know the ins and outs, and it is very hard to compete with them for the majority of the player base. And they will win they'll show up to the two-day events, and they will definitely perform very, very well
I
at
got
those
pretty
handful
damn
of
close,
players.
Mike. I got a draw
You
against
you're
Eric
doing
once.
very well.
And
You're doing very
I
well.
played Eric, so in the final round, me and Eric were like tied for the most number of battle points, and I had to play him again. But that day, he actually got enough sleep. Where the first day he
Yeah.
was running on like 4 hours of sleep. So
So
day
it's funny
two,
how sleep matters.
yeah, day two he
Yeah.
had enough sleep. So the sleep meta was
But
real.
But back to our
yeah,
our normal meta, I'd say we have a lot of the players either fall into the bucket of these are just the models they love and the army they
Yeah.
love to play, and this
yeah,
is what they're going to show up with, and they're just going to do the best they can with what they have in front of them. And then we have the other group of people who they're like they do like to compete, but they don't have enough time or to truly know everything in and out, so they'll get inspired by content creators or their lists out there with the army that they
yeah,
love. They'll take that as a base starting point of, okay, I know this is fairly competitive in the meta, and then they'll build
yeah.
off of that. And so now they could spend their energy more on painting up the models or focusing on the tactics of the game themselves. I think most people really fall into those buckets
Yeah.
as the meta has evolved.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially when we started the game, it was very much bring what you have painted.
Yep.
People
Yeah.
dug out armies from the loft from 10, 20 years ago,
Hmm.
rebased them, and then basically brought them out. So they weren't sort of like top meta competitive or anything like that. That started to evolve as we progressed, and because basically, I mean, I do a fair number of events. I probably do one every sort of 6 or 8 weeks.
Hmm.
Um, so I see this progression
Yep.
of like people, at first it began just people bringing whatever they had. Then it was like, oh, okay, people are starting to paint up their armies. And then obviously, especially more recently, you start to see Cathay come on the scene. You start to see people adapting to 1.5 with infantry blocks and bits and pieces
Hmm.
like that. So, it's really interesting to see that evolution in person. But I think, as always, basically, rule of cool is the thing that determines what army you want to play.
Pretty
I
much.
mean, if you think, if you want to do really, really well, yes, you can copy one of these lists that you find on Old World rankings that's won an event before. But if that doesn't gel with your play style, if that doesn't excite you, it doesn't interest you from a gaming perspective and modeling perspective, you're not really going to
Yeah,
succeed
no,
with
I
that very
concur.
far.
And
It's
It
got
won't
to
be
be
as
a
fun.
those players exist. Those are 40K and other systems will label those people as meta chasers, and there's nothing wrong with that, right?
yeah,
There was a point in time where I was very competitive focused a decade or
mm,
so ago. We're in 40K where I pursued that and others as well. And but to your point, those people who, because they're always chasing the meta, chasing the
mm,
dragon, if you will, it's like, well, this is what's hot today. The meta is always changing. The rules are always updating. There's always the next book.
yeah,
There's always the new FAQ. And so they'll often get something, focus on the meta, focus for a specific event, and then
yeah,
afterwards the meta will shift, and then they will sell or dump that army and move on to the next thing. And now, you know what? If they're having fun, all the power to them, right?
Yeah.
As long
yeah,
a lot of those people a lot of the meta chasers are super friendly. And they're
yeah,
really,
yeah,
really nice people, but that's their hobby goal, and that's
yeah,
great. But I would agree that I do generally see more longer term players who find
yeah,
the army they love, that find the army that speaks to them, the models, the lore, the characters, the history, the background,
yeah,
sometimes the way it looks, appealing to them in terms of the way they look, right? Sometimes, and those people who want, when you love the army, that is when it becomes a lifelong hobby. And this is where, like today, like I still love vampire counts, even though I don't play them all the time. I still, because I play a bunch of different armies now, Still my favorite, first love in Warhammer, and still is today. And I just love painting it. I have to buy and collect everything, which is actually what GW wants. They got me,
Of course.
and I pick them all up. But majority of players do fall into that bucket. I find where this is the hobby they love. This is the army they love. They're going
Yeah.
to do the best they can with this, and more often than not, players are like, I love this model. I know it's not the most competitive thing, but I want to put it on the table. And you know what? I love those players.
Exactly. And I think that was personally for many years. My goal is to be like, look, I love High Elves. I know they're not the number one army, but I want to. My aim in this tournament, this event, is to be the number one High Elf player at that event.
Mhm.
And I really loved it when events celebrated the best in faction, because it sort of felt like you were like,
Yeah.
winning the trophy, winning a number one, even though there were these tiny little like figures or
But
whatever
it
you
doesn't.
got.
It's setting a goal
matter.
that you could
Exactly.
achieve. Because if you look at event, if you just go to a tournament and your
Yeah.
only goal is to win best general at the
Mm.
tournament, you're probably not going to have a great weekend. Because guess what? Everyone else who showed up, only one person is going to be able to achieve that goal, right?
Yeah.
And so that means if there's 100 people, there's one winner and 99 losers. What a toxic way to view your weekend of fun with other
Yeah.
people, right? So having other goals, which is why we always at our events we have Old World Bingo, where I give everyone bingo sheets, and you can win prizes just for killed the enemy general, shook your
Yeah.
opponent's hand, but and it's just great. Everybody gets a bingo prize. But if you play all 5 games, you're going to get a bingo by the end of the event. Or
Nice.
we do trivia. I still love doing trivia. That's one of my favorite things. Between the rounds, we do and there's a prize for the trivia winner. And yeah, most people don't read the lore, but some people do, and they get something. And then painting, and then we'll be doing best army. And in fact, actually at our events, we actually let best sportsmanship get the first prize, and they get because we actually, rather than the best general gets $400 worth of prize support and everyone else gets $50 worth, we just have a prize table, and we just go in order of who gets to pick from the prizes. So it's same whether you got first, second, third, fourth, whatever, same prize level of prize support.
How do prizes work in where you are? Like, what does that usually look like?
So it varies. It depends very much on the individual event. It can go anything from like a budget event, which will have, like 3D printed trophies, maybe some paper certificates or something like that. And but that could still be like a 35 man tournament.
Yeah.
One day RTT, I guess. But that's sort of like at the lower end, all the way up to, you could have like, prize pool of £100 and like miniatures and bits and pieces that are all thrown into it. So it really varies from
Depends on
event
the
to
TO,
event.
right? Yeah.
Depends on the TO. I mean, even in this last year, I mean, I've been to lots of independent events. I've been to a Games Workshop run event. They have some nice trophies that
Oh yeah.
I got to touch one. That's as close as I got to that, unfortunately. But it really varies from event to event. There's still very much people are still figuring out, TOs especially figuring out what they want to do, how they want to appeal to stuff.
Well, to be fair, it's hard to
yeah.
be a TO. Let's be
Yes.
honest.
Trust.
Having been doing it now full time for almost 2 years, it's really difficult. It requires a ton of energy and support. And quite frankly, I could tell you that without Evan, without Will, without Nick, without my group of friends helping me, I couldn't do it by myself. Right? It really takes the group to be able to pull it off. And so it doesn't surprise me. And it's, then once you've got the event together, then you have to deal with the players. Right?
Yeah.
That's herding cats, right?
Yeah.
I love the community, but it is herding cats, and it is challenging. So and it's funny that so much of this scene really isn't independent. It is Games
Yes.
Workshop is saying, here are the rules, here are the models, here's whatever. But the number of Games Workshop hosted events is
it's
nothing.
drop
It's
in the
minuscule.
ocean.
It's not even worth mentioning. And if you happen to luckily live close enough where they might be running one in your timetable and such, so really worldwide, whether you're in California or the East Coast or Canada or Mexico or Scotland or wherever, it is the independent scene. It's the hobbyists that are crazy as us who to do content creation, who's saying, you know what, I'm going to put a ton of energy to hang out with my friends on this weekend, and we're going to roll dice together. But that is what drives this community, and that's what makes it really special.
And in a way, that's a really good argument for the whole where are we going? What direction are we going to take? Because there are people still out there in the community who are sitting waiting for Games Workshop to show us the way, show us the one true path of this is the tournament, this is what events should look like, and let's only do that. Well, those of us I think have been around for a little bit longer know that that's not ever really going to happen, and if it does,
No,
it's
that's
never
not
going
how
to be
they're. That's not
perfect.
their business model.
It's not. So it's very much down to us as sort of like, I want to say community leaders, people who are passionate and involved in the
Yeah.
community and want it to thrive, to start having these conversations, start having these discussions, doing events and tournaments that we think will be popular within the community, whether they are competitive focused, whether they're narrative focused, whether they are somewhere in between, and setting our own little standards for them as well.
Right.
And I think it's very much in our hands to drive this hobby and this tournament scene and this event scene forward. I think it's
So
very
if
much
it's in our
ourselves.
hands, right, and we get to drive it wherever we want, I think we should each answer
Well,
where would you
the
take
community
it.
has to want to show up to it.
Yeah,
To
and
be fair,
that's fair. You do have to
we
kind
have
of.
influence, but I'm sure
But I
Pash, you
just
have
want
the
to have an
same
ego
thing.
trip for just like 5 minutes, and the ego trip is suddenly you are JTY and you're in charge, or you're the community
Oh,
leader that everyone looks to, and you
whew.
get to say, here's what we're doing for the next 3 months. Pash, what would you want us, or the community in general, to move towards?
I think it would be nice for us to embrace experimenting with formats of events. So
Okay.
I think, and I've seen a bit of discussion about this sort of UK side, even in this week, where people are like, we need to standardize events. Every event has to be the
Oh,
same.
Jesus.
Everybody has to play 2K. Everybody, and
No.
like, I'm like, I don't even think that's the
That's what
right
happened to
format.
40K.
Like, yeah, well, and I think that's where it's coming from. I think is people are used to that sort of thing. But I know other people who have left 40K for that specific reason. Is it's
Right.
every event is the same. The
It
venue
wasn't
changes.
giving them what they wanted, right? It's the
No,
same
the
thing.
armies are the
Like
same, but
all the
you know,
terrain could just be ruins, right?
yeah,
And
exactly.
that game exists. That game is called
Yeah,
40K. Like we're here in
yeah,
Old World because of the depth, because of the variety, because it's
right, yeah,
offering a different experience than the other game system. 40K is a great game. AOS is a
yeah.
great game. I play pretty much every single Games Workshop game that exists, from Battlefleet Gothic to
Mm,
Blood Bowl. I love those games, and they're great games. Old World is going a different direction. It's offering
yeah,
something those other games aren't offering. And so I very much do not want Old World to be streamlined and adapted. And I think it's a huge mistake to saying every community, and we
yeah.
honestly get it ourselves with our videos. We get the occasional commenters like, you should just
Sure.
do what everyone else is doing. It's like, that's not the point. We're doing what our local scene is
Yeah.
excited to do, and they want
Yeah.
variety.
That's something to bring
And
up
that,
here is the renegade rules or the legacy
mm,
rules, or for example, we actually have our own, and I want to know kind of what your thought
yeah,
is. I know you've been saying some stuff recently about how in the UK it's only like 25% of events that use renegades, and we obviously have our own kind of rules on that because we had kind of. I'm insane enough that I could just do anything. I could write all the rules. In fact, I did.
yeah.
After
Oh,
8th edition was killed, I made my own Warhammer fantasy rule set called Twilight something, and it was 400 something pages long, where every single army had rules. And then I didn't publish it, and I just sat on it.
there's still time.
Yeah, there's
There's still
time.
time, Evan.
Yeah, so just for you,
Just
right?
saying.
What do you think
Yeah.
about legacy? For example,
I
legacy
think
armies being left
I think
behind.
the topic is not necessarily about
Yeah,
legacy. I think the topic, Evan, to your point, is
yeah.
how do you feel about different communities? Does every community, should they all adapt the exact same thing, or is it okay that different communities have their own different ways to approach handling the game? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think that if you have the two extremes of every game is exactly the same
Hmm.
and every game is different, I would rather be towards the every game is different end, than the same. Now, there's room for
Hopefully, we're in
knowing.
between the extremes, though.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I think it would be really stale and boring if every event was exactly the same.
Yeah.
And then I also think it might be a little bit too confusing, and it might put people off if every single event was like, oh, we're a 500 point event, we're a 3,000 point event, we're using, mad rules, we're not using anything. So you need some level of standardization. You really want to make sure that you're not putting people off from attending events, but you want enough flavor and difference there to be able to do something new, something exciting, and something experimental. So if there was any advice that I had for any budding TOs out there, is to basically keep experimenting, keep talking to your community, see what they want to do, see what they want to play with. Don't be afraid to try new things. It might not be popular in that event, and then you'll get feedback. But then you might stumble upon something, three-fifths of what you try. Those are really, really, really weird odds. Three quarters of the things you try might be a fail, but then that 1/4 people are like, actually, yes, I like that. Let's try more of that. So I think experimentation and flavor is definitely the key to success and growing the scene, rather
Yeah.
than becoming stale and
I
boring.
think that's one of the things I love about this rule set. I feel that there's so much depth and so much from the army construction to the scenarios to the objectives to the
Mm.
terrain rules, right? There's just so much creativity and canvas to make really fun, exciting things. And the best part is there's the core rules, while not perfect, are really
Yeah.
strong. This is one of the
Yes.
strongest additions to the core rules they've ever been. And the 1.5 just made them better. And so
Yeah.
there is already so much. I do feel, even with all these different types of event formats, from 2K to 3K to doubles that we're trying now and others I encourage to try, very excited for that, to narrative, to siege, there's so and more. There's so many different
Yeah.
things, but the core rules are still, when I do feel that the majority of the events, we're still using 9/10 of the exact same rules pretty much no matter what event you're going to, right? I think it's where some of that hesitation comes in with is, I think, from some of the, let's be honest, let's talk about the past, the history. In 8th edition, in 7th edition, some of the house rules for events were really intense. And to be
Yeah.
fair, they were really intense because, let's face it, the game was really broken. And so they had custom comp packets of this, our unit is worth so many comp points and that unit is worth, and there was this whole giant scene. Now that scene came about because Games Workshop back in the day wasn't supporting it to the degree they're supporting it now with rules updates and balance updates. Now, is Old World today balanced? No. Is it significantly better off than 8th edition was out of the box? Absolutely.
Oh God,
Right.
yes.
Night
Yeah.
and day difference, right? So I think
Yeah.
the fundamental core of what's out there, even the core of Legacy, does Legacy need a little bit of love? Yes, it does. But even the core of Legacy is still in a reasonable starting point that
Yeah.
whatever scene
It's
you go into
upscaling.
around the world right now, it is pretty standard. And I think it is a mistake that people from either, I think they're coming from either the 40K scene,
Yeah.
and how that's gone, or they're legacy veterans from the past in terms of they've been burned in the past and how that evolved, and they're bringing their both of these to create this pressure of everyone needs to kind of do the same thing. And I agree with you, Pash, that is a mistake. There's somewhere in between where so much is actually the same because the core of the
Yeah.
rule set is so strong. I think we need it. We will only grow this community by offering variety and offering things that 40K and AOS and the other prominent systems are not providing their communities.
And this is something interesting that I've come across, and that has become sort of more prominent recently. Is there's you say we're using the same set of rules, but we're reading them in different angles. And this is what I'm finding is there's sort of a difference in cultural gaming etiquette. There's a difference of how people approach games in different parts of the world.
Absolutely.
And this has become more apparent with all the discourse and discussion that we have online, on the Discord groups and everywhere else, but also when we have these online tournaments and you have people from different parts of the world coming together, and they have their own take on certain rules. Sometimes you take pause and you go, huh, I can see what angle you're coming from. I have never seen it that way. I look at it this way, but it's just a difference of sort of like
So you're talking
cultural
about Earthen
wargaming, I guess.
Ramparts, right? That's what you're talking about?
Oh man, let's not
let's not go into specifics, but I think that is very true that even with the
that
core
exists,
rules,
right? Yeah.
if they wanted to write these rules so they were airtight, that's basically impossible.
Yeah.
And the only way that other game systems that do handle this, like let's take an example, Magic the Gathering. The only other, like, it's another game system that is very active in resolving this, that everyone interprets it the exact same way, because they have they spend a ton of money and energy into a judge TO active scene that they are driving so much of the competitive scene. But Games Workshop is not doing that. It is very much, here's this incredible format and tool set. Players, you go ahead and drive your own. And so inherently, let's just face it, English is a complicated language. And even if you're from the same town, you could read the same sentence two different ways very easily.
Very different, yeah, and I think this leads to the next point, which is really what's one of the more important points of when you come to play a game with another person is you should have a discussion. You should have a discussion about you know, preempt any sort of rules discrepancies or maybe some disagreements, and you go, you know, I've heard there's people that disagree with this element of the game. How are we going to play it? I have this unit, it has these rules. How are we going to play that? And I honestly think if you discuss all these things as much as you can, you don't want to be there for ages before the game, but if you can discuss these things ahead of time and even just agree on how you're going to play it, you're going to reduce the level of feels bad when people have when they
Yep.
come up against something that they thought worked in a different way. And I've seen this in grown men where they essentially get the huff and they
Hmm.
go, well, that's not how I play it in my club. And they
Hmm.
just, you know, they go in the sulk and they feel like they feel like they've been sort of bullied or put pressured into playing a rule in somebody else's
Yep.
interpretation, and that feels like a gotcha. And nobody really likes that. Like
Nobody
nobody
likes
likes
Of
being.
gotchas.
course.
No,
I,
yeah, I agree.
I think clarity is what you want, and it's more. I think it's more important to have a clear rule than the right rule, as long as you both know what that
Yeah,
rule is.
as long as you're both in alignment, and that's what I tell players at our events, and that's actually what I coach people is you're constantly stating things out loud to your opponent, not because he needs to hear it, because you are making a verbal contract. We agree to the
Yeah,
state of the game, right?
yeah,
Because things change, things get bumped, things get moved, whatever. Simple
yeah,
statements as, "Hey, I'm moving, but what's your max charge range? It's X. Cool. I'm moving X plus zero point 0.1 away from you. So we agree
yeah,
I'm outside of your charge range." So it doesn't matter what happens now. We've both made that verbal agreement. So similar to your point of
that's
the
right.
rules, before we get to the potential misunderstanding, misalignment, we can reduce those frictions by just agreeing to the state of the game or the state of, hey, you and me are going to have a fun game here. Let's agree
Yeah,
to how we're going to play this out. And I love that mindset is becoming more prominent across
yeah,
communities across the world, far more so that, because remember back in 8th edition and 7th edition, the whole
mm.
gotchas, the secret things hidden in your army, not telling your opponent,
Was part of the game.
not being able to pre-measure things,
Yeah,
that was the game. And finally, and again, huge props to how 40K spearheaded, and the people, the game
yeah,
designers and rules writers over the last decade in 40K have been trying to remove those feel bad moments, and they have done, in my opinion, an excellent job of reducing them
mm,
significantly. And you're seeing Old World is now benefiting from Games Workshop as a game creating company, running a hobby, running event company, understanding it's not just people with their friends in a basement. It is a global phenomenon, a global community who wants to get out there and go to social events and activities and play, and supporting that and realizing, let's remove the feel bad moments. And Old World is
yeah.
totally benefiting from that.
It is, and I think it's something that we need to promote is that that habit, that attitude that people have to games, where it's like it's a game between two people. It's not I'm trying to beat you into submission. You know, it's a game between two people. You're both meant to enjoy it. Let
Win
the
or lose.
dice,
Yeah.
yeah, let the dice and the tactics decide the outcome of this, not dodgy rules interpretations or arguments about what you read online on a forum. I've this is and I'll digress a little bit, but there is, I've had instances where people try and play things in a funny way, and I'm like, look, people have read things in weird ways,
Yeah.
but I've never seen anyone read it that way. And they go, well, I read it online and they said it works like that, so I'm just going to trust it. I'm like, if you don't understand how that's meant to work, and I don't agree that it should work like that, maybe we're not going to
Yeah.
play it that way because that doesn't feel like the right thing to do. But it's all about discourse. It's all about having that friendly relationship and being able to have the right attitude when you go into games. And I think that's really, really important. And it's something that should be promoted and something that should be lauded, really. So I
Yep.
do think that your most sporting award is probably something that should be maybe encouraged even more,
Yeah.
because making sure that there is an achievement to making sure that all your opponents had a great time at the end of the weekend. That
That is
is
the most important thing. I tell everybody at the beginning of the events,
massive.
listen, there's only going to be one person here who wins all their games. Sometimes nobody wins all their games. But
Yeah,
you know who's really the reason why we're here is to have a great weekend, is to have the next great weekend. And that's
yeah,
about walking away with a new friend or multiple new
yeah,
friends. That is it doesn't matter how much fun we have playing this game. If you don't have a community to play it with and you need to grow that community,
yeah,
then what's the point, right? Then you're just, you're not going anywhere with it. And it is about building that and establishing the community and making those friends that you didn't
yeah.
see 10 years later. They're coming back and you're still just picking it right
Oh,
back up where you left off. And that's what really is the heart and soul of this. Back to where we started at the beginning. You're making new friends, right? In your 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. This is one of the few venues that you can do that. And going into that mindset of I'm here to have a great weekend at an event and make some friends, you can still be competitive. That is not a mutually
of course.
exclusive statement from competing in painting, competing in this, and competing in that. But remember back in the day, sportsmanship used to be something that
Yeah,
every event used to do. And then over the last decade, that was removed
yeah,
Yeah.
because the system that they graded sportsmanship and how they awarded sportsmanship was,
yeah,
let's just say, broken, and it was abusable and such. And so it was
yeah.
removed as a concept from the hobby. And I know we're not the only community that has brought it back and focused on it. I know other communities
Mhm.
are as well. I very much encourage everybody. Best sportsmanship is the first trophy we hand out, and it's the first prize pick is best sportsmanship. Because let's be honest, that is the most important award. That person is the reason why whoever they played against is going to want to come
Yeah,
to the next event.
yeah, definitely. And I think it's definitely something that we need to sort of put more on the pedestal. I think is being because at the end of the day, all you really have is your reputation. That nobody really remembers every single detail of a game, but they will
No.
remember how fun it was or how crap it was if you made them feel like like
Yep.
that the non-enjoyable game. So like you'll walk away and then people will have an impression of you, whether whether you're it doesn't really matter the skill level that you are, but they will have an impression of you whether you're a good fun player to play against, or if you're somebody that they'd rather not play with again.
Yeah. You got to
And
remember,
I
this is
think
not a professional sport. No one's walking
no,
away with $100,000 prize.
no,
No one's, we're
exactly.
walking away with, more models, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
right, more of what we're already doing. So really
yeah,
the only real win is growing the community and and people who want to hang out with you again. That is
yeah.
truly the most valuable thing because you're just getting more models to paint for the sake of more models. That doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, and this your reputation will follow you,
It will.
throughout other parts of sort of the gaming sphere. It's a fairly small community of people, really, and not on the grand scale of
Right.
things.
Yep.
Like we all know each other, and if
Mhm.
somebody comes over from another gaming system and they have a bad reputation, somebody else will
And
say,
we'll over with it.
you watch that guy because he was playing in this event and he cheated or he like
Microwaved his
Whatever.
pushes
dice,
rules and
perhaps I
stuff
could
like.
mention.
Well, yeah, I have been watching a
Let's
video this week about that, but yeah,
anyway.
and that's the other thing is like these stories last, like these
Yeah.
especially the bad stories, unfortunately.
Yeah, they'll haunt you.
Yeah, they'll haunt you. Like so you really want to be squeaky clean, and you want to be not ever tempted into for the sake of a 3D printed
Doesn't matter.
gold trophy. Like it doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's more important that you can walk away knowing that you know were sort of
Earned it.
you earned it. Like yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's why I think that one of the greatest achievements that you can do, especially as a competitive player, is to get sportsmanship votes and still place really highly. Like what
And you
one of my
can do
sort of.
both. That is totally possible.
Exactly. Well, funny you should say that, because one of my sort of most proudest moments of my wargaming career actually happened earlier this year. It was a 1 day event. I played 3 games, and I did win the event, but I also got the most sporting votes.
That's amazing.
So
That's
like
fantastic.
to be first and to also have most sporting is like
Pretty hard.
genuinely humbling. It was really, really,
Yeah,
really
that's
nice.
that's re- that's
Um,
fantastic. That's hard to do,
it,
right? And how
it's
many people
it's
could
hard
say
to
that?
do. exactly.
It means you beat up
And
3 people and they had so much fun, they wanted to play with you again.
they wanted to do it again, and that's really rare. I mean, the only way to trump that is if you also maybe walk away with a best painted award. And I only know of one
That's
man
the
in the
pinnacle.
UK who has ever
Gone all three.
done that on a regular basis,
Yeah.
and it's AD Mac. He is known as a gentleman of Warhammer. He actually recently did a little episode with another content creator called Give Ground. So I recommend you
I
guys look
love
that
it.
up. But AD Mac, yeah, he's a triple threat. He was a fantastic painter, fantastic gamer, and really really friendly. And they do go on about the sportsmanship sort of element on there, and that's something I think that we do need to push more. And I should probably also do that more with the events that I run, is to maybe take after you guys and give the most sporting prize first pick of the loot.
Yeah,
Maybe
and it's
that's
a
what we'll
different,
have
it's
to
a
do.
shift, right? It's a pretty big culture shift because everyone is very much used to, again, most of the people who are from that competitive mindset or either
Mm.
coming from the end of eighth, or again, our experience has been the majority of people in the competitive mindset are coming from 40K. And that is the way the system has been running and operating for quite a while now and such. And they're just like, you know what? Old World's a breath of fresh air. It's just so different
Yeah.
than what they get over there. And it's a different experience. So yeah, definitely encourage everyone to do that. All right, Evan, we are getting close to our hour plus mark at this point.
Yeah.
Any last topic or two you want to
Oh,
hit before we wrap this one
I
up?
got so many, but I'm going to
You
restrain
have to
myself.
narrow it down.
You have to leave something for another episode.
Yeah, we'll do another episode, but pick one more for us, Evan. One more topic before we close this out.
God, who's your favorite new special character they released in Old World?
Oh, okay.
Is that a hard one?
Mike, you go first.
Oh, new favorite character. For me, it's going to be Frido. Absolutely.
Right.
She is so awesome. It's just a great. I love that they're making new characters because they could have so
Mhm.
easily just gone back to, well, here's the same characters you knew
Yeah.
Yeah.
from the last 30 plus years or whatever. But they're not. They're expanding. They're it started with they're retconning a few things, but if you read the arcade, they're not retconning. They are expanding this world.
Yeah.
Clearly, the Old World team, JTY, and the crew and everyone involved are like, we are here to stay. Like, people don't know it
Yeah.
yet, but this is going to be a big hit, and we are
World
going to make
building.
this happen. And they are built. That's right. They're building out the world, and I love it because it's not the static world that it always was before. And 40, again, thank you 40K for breaking that mold of the timeline can move forward. Thank you 40K. They were the
And
first ones to do it. Yep. And so now we're going backwards and like, yes, we could move our timeline forward, sideways, left ways, right ways, whatever ways. And they are expanding the world and evolving it. And so it is the world that was, but it's also the world that's going to be and where they're taking it. I love that. I love these new characters, Friedel, because one, it's just a really cool character. I love seeing kind of that earlier aspect of that ascension through chaos. I don't know that she's going to make Demon Prince. That's a pretty hard aspiration to achieve, but it's that early journey of a champion of chaos. And it's this really cool. The model is great. I love it. She's just so powerful and badass with that flail. I wish it was plastic, but still a great model. Definitely one of my favorites. And I love that it wasn't like a 600-point character, right? That was just like, I'm the most epic tier of whatever. Nope, she's just a really cool model, and it's just really fun to put her on the battlefield.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm in the same vein. So my favorite new special character is a Shia Vess.
Okay.
And the Shia Vess is not groundbreaking. Her rules are not immense. I mean, I've been trying to make Sigurd Garrison work with her, and it doesn't matter that they're absolutely terrible. It's fun. Like, she's just this really sort of badass elf, and you don't
Great
get
model.
that. Like, it's very counter to sort of like the background. And they could have just released any of the hundreds of like elf characters that we all know and love.
Yes.
But no, they created this badass semi-pirate type of like character, and she constantly punches above her weight whenever I have in games, because you have that sort of like she has the what's the word? It's like lore protection, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you're like,
Plot
she's part of
armor.
the story, so she's plot armor, exactly. So she's gonna survive and she's gonna do well. I've had her in single combat kill demon princes. I've had her
Oh,
kill
geez.
chaos lords.
Because you believe in her.
Exactly.
And so she's gonna roll sixes because you have
If
faith
you
in
roll
her.
enough sixes, that's it. It turns out if you roll enough sixes, you
But
can
to your
make stuff.
point, the
You can make
characters
stuff
they're
happen.
making, the new ones, the majority of them, it's not like back in the day. Back in the day, it was about just purely selling models in terms of all the special characters rules were absolutely OP back in the day, and they were always like, whatever I custom build, the special character is going to be that plus 50%. They're not doing that formula. They could be, but they're choosing not to. Instead, they're giving us models and background and stories that are inspiring. And so now it's like, that character's so cool, not because it's going to kill everything on the table. I love the theme of, I want to build an army to go with this character. And I think they're doing a great job of that.
Well, my favorite is Kralmaw so far.
Oh, okay.
Model amazing. You got a wizard who's on foot, and he's got his creepy little leering spirit thing. You get to deploy.
Definitely creepy.
And it just kind of does a vampire count scream at something once per turn, which is pretty great. Yeah, and the lore behind it of him kind of leading these wild herds through the Empire and kind of starting to basically... I mean, one of the things that I really like about what they're doing is they're really changing the focus of Old World. They're not just copy-pasting everything where High Elves and Dwarves and Empire are like the big stars and everyone else is a secondary. Like, Tomb Kings, really important. Bretonnia, really important. And now Beastmen, very important. So they're trying to overemphasize, in fact, a lot of these really critical people and these critical factions that just kind of got left behind in years past, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it feels like it's fresh. It's a fresh setting, even though we're in the past of what we know is happening in the future. It still feels like, I don't know, with 7th and 8th edition, the lore from 6th, 7th, 8th was like pretty static. It was like, well, there's small events happening here and there, but generally everything is status quo. You know, it's pretty much exactly the same. Well, now it feels like, oh well, actually, you know, we're at a time where High Elves are not a sort of diminishing, dying faction. They have outposts out in the world. You know, Wood Elves are out in force. Like you've got all these really cool sort of lore things that are working in the background, and it feels like something could happen that like there could be things happening that we don't know about. You know, like it feels like new ground and it feels fresh, which I really like.
And I know you started that statement where you know where this is going. I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that's true. I think you think we know where we're going. I think everybody says it's inevitable. I'm telling you, Old World is going to be here 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and it is not going to be the end times again. I'm confident they are steering this game system in the right direction.
Imagine the reaction if they said end times 2, and it's just like a reboot, and it was like, we're going to do it better this time.
We're like, popular the first time.
No. They have learned so much, and that's the thing that mad props to that team and those people who convinced Games Workshop against all the odds. Bring it back. We don't care our models are 30 years old or 20 years old. We don't care that. Anyway. People, I love the system. We have a new rule set. We've learned all the lessons that Games Workshop has learned from AOS, from 40K, from the competitive scene, the evolving community, the space, and they brought it into Old World. And I truly believe they've made something special, which is why I'm telling you, in less than 5 years, it's going to be number 2. I don't know how fast it's going to get there, but I'm confident Old World's going to get there.
So when are we going to see 2nd edition?
I think 2027. That's my prediction. I believe they have enough Arcane Journal. I believe Kislev is on the way. I believe in 2026 we're going to see some core faction or legacy factions become core. Not all of them, because remember, it's about the manufacturing process of they have to re-release the kits and everything. I think the obvious contenders are Vampire Counts and Dark Elves because in AOS they've really gone a very different direction with them. So it's a kind of an easy one. And they just released Graveguard and Black Knights that aren't Graveguard. So clearly Vampire Counts are teed up for that. So those are my theories. I don't actually have any information that anybody else doesn't have, but since you're asking, I believe we're going to see more awesome Arcane Journals like we just saw with the latest one, where we see more terrain, more all the things that they couldn't fit into the first wave of books. We're now getting wave 2, more terrain rules. I think we'll maybe see siege rules. I think we'll see all these other things that the designers are like, I really want to release this content, but they didn't have the canvas yet. And now like, yes, I can make an Arcane Journal focused on what I really want to release out into the player base. Like Evan said the other day, they're really robust White Dwarf articles, but they feel official and they're more thought out and they're very well supported. So I think we're going to see that through 2026 with those other things. I don't know if we'll get more than 2 legacy factions, but my prediction is 2027 will be edition 2.
Yeah, and it'll either be legacy, like kind of re-released as Dark Elves or whatever, or it could be, hey, there's these Black Art Corsairs, and they're a spooky new faction who's just like Dark Elves, but we just don't have some Witch Elves in there, and everything else is new. Right?
Could be.
So I have a theory about that. I think I do agree that we will see some legacy factions come into the game. I don't think it'll be the same that we've seen so far.
Might not be.
It might not be. So I think basically, if you want to see what might be happening in Old World, the miniatures game, you have a look at Old World, the Total War series, and you see what they already have. So I actually
They've been
think
busy.
Vampire
they've been
Coast.
busy. I think we might see Vampire Coast. I
Yeah.
think
That's
that
very
might be a
possible.
thing
Imagine if
because
they just
it's
say,
such a cool
"Hey,
concept.
there's this brand new faction you've never heard of before. It's called the Vampire Coast, and they have Depth Guard, and they just put the Grave Guard models with a different paint color on them, and they're like, "Isn't this
That
new
might-
and different?" And you're like, "No, but okay, we love it, right?"
Well,
We'll see.
exactly. Like nobody's going to complain about it.
Exactly.
But
Everybody's
to your
gonna love
point, they could potentially, if you look at like to your point, Pash, of the scale of the Cathay release, it's very similar to like
Yeah.
the 40K new faction releases, where it's a tight, 6, 7, 8 models. What's the minimum number of new kits they need to release to be enough to see wave one of an army? And could they
Yeah.
do that with a Vampire Coast or with a Dark Elf Corsair army or so forth? But then they could still release the older kits and still have those units where you just want zombies, and so, but it could have the wrappers. So that's, I mean, whatever they release, if it's vampires related, I'm probably going to buy all of it and probably a lot of it. So either way, I hope we get our vampires. I still put them on the table now. They're still one of my favorite armies. If
Yeah.
not my favorite. So
Vampire Coast seems really likely because the Old World designers seem really obsessed with naval combat. Like the latest Arcane Journal
Yeah.
has
because it's
Cathay
cool.
fighting against Norska on the high seas. Like they literally have like description of a naval battle where the chaos is running down this fleeing Empire fleet, and then the Cathay fleet shows up, and the Sky Lanterns drop bombs on their ships, and it's like, oh cool, I want to watch this in a movie, please, thank you.
Yeah. Maybe we will get it. Maybe we'll
Maybe
get
naval combat
Old
rules.
World Dreadfleet sort of
Dreadfleet,
like
yeah.
spin-off. Yeah.
Who knows? But
Oh,
hopefully
man.
we're
knows?
along the way. So we'll see.
It's definitely well. One thing is for sure, Old World is only getting bigger and more exciting,
Oh
and I,
Yes.
for one, can't wait to see where we end up. It's going to be an exciting time.
All right, so I know we're going to be wrapping up this episode. Pash, thank you so much for coming on the episode. It was great to have you, sir. Could you go ahead and plug your channel for everybody out there
Yeah.
who's listening or gotten this far in the episode?
Yes, if you haven't joined already, you can find me on Pashhammer. I do competitive battle reports. I do event tournament reviews, comp packs, bits and pieces like that, and just a little bit of hobby time as well. So feel free to join me there. It'll be very much
Yes,
appreciated.
and also a great competitive player when we run our online events as well. Always good to have you, sir. All right, Evan, we're wrapping it up. Any last closing words, sir?
I just think that all of us here and everyone watching can stay legendary, and I'm going to put a link to Pash's channel in the description, so for people who don't know how to Google, it's in there, right? Yeah. If you know how to play Warhammer and you don't know how to Google stuff, I would love to meet you and shake your hand.
If they're watching our channel, they know how. All right, we'll see you all next time. Thank you so much.
All the best. Bye bye.